Here's how the question reads.
Hmm.
Growing up conflicted about your gender identity, how did comic books and superheroes factor into your coming to terms with being transgender?
Well, it's kind of hard to pinpoint too, but I guess the best way to answer it would probably be I didn't realize a lot about myself until I was in college. And uh, the thing with me, I didn't start like actually really getting into comic books until I was like 14 or 15. I always had them there, but they didn't really have as much of an impact on me as when, I turned 18. I came to college. I was by myself. I didn't have my family with me. And I wasn't really sure if I was allowed to be different. Creating characters that I had, a lot of these characters come from me, and my internal struggle of like, do I really want to do this? Is this really what I want? And I kind of remembered that going back to comic books, like you have a lot of stuff like that. You have Peter Parker who's like, should I tell people I'm Spider-Man? Should I keep it inside? This is who I am though, And it's like me being trans, it doesn't change who I am as a person. It just changes my name and my pronouns. And maybe the way that I look, but really I'm still the same person. I'm still the snarky asshole and I'm still growing. And so what superheroes and comics have taught me was that there's never a time where you don't grow. You still have time to figure yourself out. You still have time to make mistakes. You still have time to, you know, figure out who you are. So it's like the X-Men, basically. They're born that way. They can't help the fact that this is something that develops eventually to them. Like Nightcrawler, literally born as a blue creature. He can't help that. But he lives with it, and he understands that not a lot of people will accept it. People will hurt you and degrade you and berate you and like do anything they can to break you down, but he still powers through it. Now, guaranteed he has fucking powers, so that's great, but for me, I'm not that invincible. So there are some times when I kind of have to take the role of the, what would you say, everyday man, like Superman. I have to be the Clark Kent sometimes, where I don't tell anybody, about myself for fear of, being hurt. Comics and superheroes kind of influenced me in the sense of like having more confidence in myself and knowing who I am. You don't have to rely on stereotypes or, what you may think a certain race or a certain group of people goes through. So the biggest thing for me is to create stories, create characters who come from different backgrounds instead of having them be like supporting or secondary characters where they're disposable, because no one is disposable. Everybody is the main character of their own life. So why shouldn't they be able to see themselves on screen? What I want to see is people taking a chance on different types of characters. And you get more of a story, you get more of a conflict. You understand, like, this isn't just an everyday thing for, you know, your regular average Joe. Like, no, this is someone who's different. You're seeing it from a different perspective, and there's nothing wrong with that. I feel like people are too afraid of that in media. They're too afraid to explore that. Like, multi-dimensional characters that don't revolve around stereotypes. You know, I definitely don't. As a human being, I may be Latino, but I don't follow the stereotypes of being Latino. It's not rice and beans for me all the time. Sometimes I like mac and cheese. Like,
Maybe it's just because of like the people I surround myself, or maybe just because of like the area I live in. But
mm-hmm.
I did not like
Yeah.
LGBT people. And actually, believe it or not, you were the first transgender person I ever actually met.
I
No,
could believe
no,
it.
really, like,
I could believe it.
um,
I had a lot of internalized homophobia and transphobia when I was growing up, so I would call people tranny and things like that, and that's not a
I
word you
would
should
too.
do. Yeah, and I would do that, and it was because I internalized a lot of that. I didn't think that I could be that way. It's tough looking back on stuff and being like, God, I was such an asshole. Like, God, I was so cringy. Why was I so edgy about everything, you know? And I look at it now and I'm like, I had those experiences because I had to go through them. So that's why when we worked together, you know, last year, I didn't want to push anything. I really didn't. Because I was like, he's going to have his own opinions. I'm not going to waste my time trying to convince someone that I'm a human being. Because you know I'm a damn human being. You're aware of it. You see me. You hear me. And, you know, you weren't as... what's the word? I know the word in Spanish, but I don't know the word in English. But it's like, you weren't as intense about, you know, being against anything that I stood for. So I took that as a good sign. And I took it as a sign of like, well, maybe we should just learn from each other. Maybe that's, you know, that's just it. And so, I don't know. We had a lot of similar ideas, so I figured we could bridge the gap that way.
Yeah, I just wanted to tell you that because you probably never like knew that you had that much of an effect on like my changing viewpoint regarding LGBT. And,
I never really noticed. It's not like I don't notice.
Show it. Maybe that's why. Because I like.
Well, no, I just always assumed that you were fine. Like you were just okay. So I didn't push it. I don't think anything extra. If people tell me like, oh, you know, you made me think something different, or you opened my mind to things, I'm like, what? I did? Me? And they're like, yeah, you made an impact on me. And I was like, cool. It's nice to hear, because sometimes I just feel like I don't have an impact on the world, unfortunately, and it sucks. But then this keeps me going, you know, like comics and things like that. I'm like, anybody can have an impact on the world. Anybody can, no matter how small it is. And so it's worth sticking around to see, you know?
Yeah.
It's worth sticking around to try.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what's important. At least for me, I want to get that point across with anything that I do.